Hello GameSpot viewers, it's Kevin Van Ord here, and Tryon Worlds is in the house today, and Andrew, with Tryon Worlds, is going to tell us about Devilian. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm excellent, and I don't know anything about this game.
Well, fantastic. So I'm joined here by Victoria, who's actually going to be steering, and we're going to walk through Devilian, an action RPG, MMORPG. So first we'll jump into character creation here. We're taking a look at the Evoker class. She's that spell-slinging class that can cause a lot of traps. She can create whirlwinds and suck enemies into them and then AoE them down with her big fire blasts. Shadow Hunter, a whip-wielding class, can switch between melee and ranged pretty easily, so he's like for a lot of variety, a lot of really cool tricks. Our Cannoneer is a bit of a favorite around the office. She's a trap-laying class, and she's very strategic. A lot of kiting, a lot of big cannon blasts, that kind of thing. And finally, our Berserker. Our Berserker is that dual-wielding, sword, plate-wearing character. And we're going to take a look at one of the things that makes Devilian super unique, devil form. So in Devilian, you have two types of characters. You have your normal character that you just saw, but they can shift at any moment into Devilian. And these characters are supercharged versions of your character. They have their own experience points, their own gear, their own skills that you earn as you play through the game. And we'll jump on the Shadow Hunter so you can get a first look at this.
Great. And I'm sure you'll answer all of these questions, but the first question in my mind is what are the limitations on entering that form, of course? Because I'm sure I'm not going to just run around the game all the time like that.
So you have a couple of limitations. As you kill things, you'll collect Devil Soul, which is both your experience, but also how you transform into Devilian mode. So that meter in the bottom of the screen right there, in between your health and energy mechanic, is how much time you have to be in Devilian. Once Victoria gets enough Devil Soul by killing enemies, she'll be able to transform into Devilian. Interesting though is when you're in PvP, which is a huge feature in this game, you're always in Devilian mode. So you'll be running around using all the skills that you've collected, all the gear that you've equipped, but in PvP. We're heading down onto, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop me.
Sure, absolutely.
So we're going to take a look at another mechanic that makes,
there we go.
Mode right there. And so the Shadow Hunter gets a lot of cool skills. You see her her HUD completely changed down at the bottom, her toolbar. So she gains all of the skills that she's gained from Devilian. And she can level that up for PvP, from dungeons, from the Endless Tower. There's a lot of different ways that she can gain more Devilian skills. And we'll walk down to one of the really cool features and what makes this an MMO over an ARPG. Victoria's unfortunately on our internal server, but this is a persistent world first and foremost. So you'll be running around with tons of different players. You can join with them, you can form groups, do dungeons, everything that you love about MMORPGs, just with action RPG combat.
Now when I was first pitched on the game, it was described to me as, what if Diablo 3 were actually a true MMO? Do you think that's a pretty good description of what you're going for here?
In a sense, really, this is an MMO first and foremost. So when you think of like MMOs, like a dungeon run, for instance, you go out, you form a group, and you do this instanced piece of content.
Sure.
In Devilian, you form a group of 3, and you go into that dungeon, and the boss fights have coordinated attacks that you have to learn. You have to kind of strategically think about it. You have these dungeon runs.
Right.
In addition to that, there's also raids at the end game. So those are up to 9 players. So similar to an in-game dungeon run, but with 9 players.
Sure.
And then one of the things that really sets us apart is PvP. So PvP is a 20 versus 20 battle. And in that, it's a domination style map, so you try to capture control points. And when you capture control points, it spawns NPC helpers to help slow down your opponents or join your side, help you out. We're looking at one of the world bosses too, another kind of unique thing about being in an open world. So when one of these guys spawns, the whole zone is told that a world boss has spawned. And it becomes almost a race to kill him. And unfortunately, Victoria is not going to be able to kill this. No matter how many potions she uses.
His health bar is not even really moving.
So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can see he has 4 health bars total. as you go through and kill them.
Well, at least we get the idea of what the world boss is like. But it does sound like you're going through, except for PvP, which you said at 20 versus 20, correct? It sounds like in terms of adventuring with others, you're going for more of, I don't know if smaller is the right word, but something a little bit more friendly, with 3 people in normal groups and then only 9 people in raids.
So with grouping, that's for dungeon content. Right now we're in the overworld, the normal maps.
Right.
This could be any number of players. So if you can imagine, all of this will be populated with players. They'll be doing things like world bosses. We have Rift events, if you're familiar with that from Rift.
Sure.
Big holes in the earth open up and demons start pouring out and it becomes contested. Players need to try to kill or either a world boss or as many enemies as possible, race along the leaderboard. As well as open world PvP is also a feature in the game.
Sure. Now I see here you've gone for a bit of a different camera angle, just to show things off a little bit more closely. But typically, even when you do this, are the controls going to be Diablo-esque as opposed to wandering around from a behind-the-back third-person perspective? Is there that option for people?
Yeah, so she is in third-person mode. It really depends on how you want to play. I tend to play with the ARPG traditional isometric camera.
Sure.
If you want to play in that, or if you want to zoom in further, you can. You'll notice, though, one of the cool things, Victoria's, she's using a combination of mouse look and WASD. Devilian is all about having a lot of control over your character and how they're using their attacks. So a lot of her attacks are aimed with her mouse while she uses WASD to move around.
Right.
And while that sounds not that exciting, it's actually, once you get your hands on it, one of the best feelings in the world to control an ARPG with WASD.
So are there in that sense, you're talking about controlling the skills with the mouse. Are there would you say that a lot of it's sort of AoE based, or what kind of skills in general do you think drive the game, or at least this class in particular?
So each character class has 3 skill trees they can go down, and each skill tree has several skills within it. Every level you get a skill point that you can invest into your skills. If you find yourself leaning more towards, let's say, trap lane as the cannoneer, and you want to invest heavily in a skill that does that, you can invest more points into there and modify it. So that trap suddenly can, you're laying down more bombs when you set bombs, or they have a larger blast radius, or maybe they slow the enemy down. It really depends on how your play style,
right.
You finding a skill that works for you. As you dump more points into that skill, you gain mastery over that skill and it becomes a stronger version of itself.
Sure.
There's a lot of ways to customize your character. One of the cool things about Devilian versus other MMOs is that there's no Holy Trinity system. There's no healer class, for example. You find the skills that you love to play with, and when you form up with a group, part of the challenge is figuring out, okay, what skills do we have as a group that we can use to overcome this dungeon, this challenge?
Sure. Now, Guild Wars 2 played around with that idea of not having a Holy Trinity, but there was a downside to that, which is that a lot of group fights just ended up being a lot of people mashing away at one particular enemy. Does Devilian get around that in some way, or are there ways that it keeps you, invested, so that there's tactics to the battle outside of just smash, smash, smash?
Yeah. So Victoria's using a lot of AoE attacks because that's the way her character's set up, and that works really great, especially when you're out questing. And this is a very quest-driven game. There's a storyline that you progress through as well. But you can spec it, your characters, very much on how you want them to work. So if you find, like, in a dungeon you have a boss that just needs a little bit extra defense, you don't necessarily have a tank class, but you can have a class that is spec towards tank. Otherwise, you might have to do a little bit more kiting. You might have to find the one skill that you have that will allow you to overcome that challenge in that dungeon.
So tell us about this world. What does it stand for? What's going on? Give me some context for all of this, hacking and slashing.
Okay, so you're a Devilian. They're a race of half humans, half devils. And this is a very long time since the last Devil War. The Devil Wars were where the Devilians came out and they defeated the ultimate enemy, Chaos. We are planning to release a couple of lore documents over the next couple of weeks that are going to detail out a lot more of the lore and the background story and what's going on in the world since the end of the Devil War. But needless to say, your character, he woke up from 100 years into the future, and the world has changed, but the emergence of the devils are starting to come back.
And in terms of the tone, what do you think? What do you think that it's interesting to me because when I saw the splash screen and I see some elements of this, we're talking about a Korean developer here, correct? There are some elements of that, but it's interesting because I see a lot of elements that don't necessarily fit into that tone per usual. In fact, it looks a lot more, maybe even, Diablo inspired than I would have expected. That's really adorable.
Yeah,
by the way. So and to me that says that says, hey, this is a Korean MMO. But other aspects say, hey, this might not be quite what I was expecting in terms of art, in terms of world design, and so on. What do you think they're going for here? What is the ultimate tone that you expect Devilian to hit?
Well, there definitely is a dark aesthetic to the game world. That's maybe not being conveyed in this particular zone too well with the flowers and the. So Corgi Doggy is an example of one of the pets in the game, and there's many different pets. There's some more serious, there's some more playful ones. I love that little guy. He's adorable. But the overall tone, it is a dark storyline. There's some mature content as well. It's more leaning towards the mature dark side of things. That being said, there's a lot of room for humor, and it's the quest dialogue, stuff like that, will definitely convey that as well.
Sure. Now, sadly, we're not going to get to see any grouping today, which makes me kind of sad because I'd love to see how that goes. Are there any tools beyond the fact that you're just adventuring together? Things like group skills and things like that, where you can pull off really incredible feats that you're not going to see unless you're with other people.
Yeah. So when, like I mentioned earlier, part of the fun of dungeons is trying to figure out what the best use of all the skills that you have available to you. So there's a duty finder, dungeon finder, that pairs you with 2 other players, so 3 people total. And like I mentioned, there's no holy trinity. So you jump into this adventure with 2 other players, and you immediately kind of have to figure out, okay, what did everybody spec for? What are we in for? There's a lot of kind of creative combos that you'll have to start creating from the skills that you have in order to overcome these challenges.
Right.
Devilian has a ton of ways to customize your character and make him your own. In addition to your leveling path and getting the skills and stuff like that, we have the Devilian character grows independently, so you'll be leveling that and equipping him with gear. You have a talisman system. So the talisman system is a way to also grow your character. You gain those through the crafting system, and they are equipable bonuses for your character that grow as you level up. And they grow by sacrificing talismans you don't want. So for example, if you want to focus on magic attacks, you can equip a talisman that specializes in that, and then sacrifice the talismans you don't want into that to grow it. Past that, if you're an MMO veteran, you're probably familiar with the term alternate advancement. We have a whole alternate advancement system in the game that allows you to kind of specialize and customize your character once you get to more towards the end game. On top of that, there's a gem system that also levels up, that enhances the properties of your equipment, and also your equipment levels up at past a certain rank.
Now you mentioned crafting for a moment. In terms of the crafting system in the game, is it fairly typical of an MMO, of M&Ms apparently? Is it fairly typical of an MMO, or are we talking about something that's maybe a little bit unique? The reason I ask is because a lot of in a lot of MMOs, ultimately I end up not caring about crafting. I end up wanting to just buy the things other people are making because they're more patient than I am to collect the stuff in the first place. So is that going to be a viable option for me, or is crafting going to be something a little bit more core to the average experience, do you think?
Crafting in Devilian is all about using stuff that you didn't actually need. So when you get that item from a dungeon and you don't need it for your character, that's when it comes into the crafting. You break that down into the materials that you use to craft things that you do need. And it feeds into more of the core gameplay than I would say, running around looking for a node that has iron or whatever.
Right. So in the end, is what is sort of the kind of hook that you're trying to get into the player. Obviously, it's an MMO, and so there are other things to do besides something that I'm just going to jump into Diablo and play for a little while or whatever. But in the end, do you think the hook is similar to that in the sense that you want people to be driven to keep finding better loot and keep clicking on the enemies because it looks so cool to watch, and you become more and more powerful? I mean, obviously, this is a combat-driven game, right? And so is that ultimately the hook that you want to go for in terms of how the player attaches to the game?
Ultimately, the hook here, as in many MMOs, is the social element.
Okay.
So there's a lot of world bosses that you can kill, and that loot explosion happens, and that's very satisfying. Everybody loves that. But in MMOs, I love to play dungeon content. I love to group up and explore. I love to do raids, get gear from that manner. Big theme in Devilian is guilds. So guilds is an extremely robust system in our game. Not only can you hang out with your guild members and things like that, but you can form guild alliances between several guilds who can join you for anything from open world PvP to world bosses to rift events, those kind of things. Another great thing is, say for example, you meet a guild that maybe you're not friends with. You don't like them. Maybe they're harassing you. Maybe they're talking crap in chat or something. You can form a guild war against them. And now your guild members and their guild members are going to meet each other in PvP, meet each other in competitive PvE environments. There's a lot of really cool things like that. Another feature that I personally really love is you can give gifts to guild members up to a certain number per day. You get a free gift to give. You get 10 free, I believe. Still settling on that number though. But you get 10 free gifts to give a day. As you give gifts to guild members, they become stronger. Your affinity relationship grows with that person, and the gifts become stronger and stronger. It pays to be the most popular person, basically.
Right. Andrew, Victoria, I'm really glad you stopped by to show us Devilian, and I keep getting stuck on the name. I keep wanting to say Devilian, and it's Devilian, as devil at the beginning. So for anybody that keeps making the same mistake that I do, but this is looking really good. What are the release plans? Do you have any beta plans? Do you have a release date in mind?
Yeah. So the goal is to have it out before 2015, before end of year. So we definitely want players to be playing this game soon. We love it at the office, and we have plans to announce our beta plans very soon. So you can stay tuned on how you can join the beta, participate, and get your hands on this game.
Excellent. Well, there's never too much loot to find out there, so looks like there will be another way to find it. And guys, I'm grateful for you coming by. I'm grateful for everybody that tuned in to watch Devilian, and keep your eyes on the site. I suspect that we'll have even more cool things for you to watch very soon.